There are truths we don't share to prove others wrong. Sometimes we keep them because we're not sure we deserve them ourselves. On the night of my father's birthday, everything I had hidden for a decade stepped into the light. Not to humiliate anyone, not to boast, but because a part of me needed them to finally see me the daughter they believed would always stay small, unremarkable, forgettable. I was never any of those things. I just stopped trying to convince them. If you've ever carried a quiet triumph in your heart, waiting for the right moment, you know how heavy it becomes over time. Tonight, in the lobby of a hotel that belonged to me, that weight was finally ready to be set down. This is the story of how I stopped shrinking to fit someone else's idea of who I should be. I remember the small corner of my childhood bedroom. A wooden desk my father built, a single lamp casting a warm yellow pool of light. That was where I first sketched the outlines of a place I dreamed of. A hotel with tall windows, soft music in every hallway, and rooms filled with kindness. While other children played outside, I stayed in that corner, tracing blueprints in old notebooks. I didn't have the right words for it then. I only knew that creating something beautiful felt more real to me than any approval I tried so hard to earn. Sometimes my mother would stand in the doorway, arms folded. She'd say, "You can't live in dreams, Evelyn," but I did. I lived there because it was the only place that felt like my own. My sister Lauren never needed a corner to escape to. She fit perfectly into the world our parents understood. She was graceful, confident, always knowing the right thing to say. People called her the gifted, and my mother would smile with quiet pride. At every school event, Lauren's achievements were celebrated out loud. My father's hand on her shoulder, my mother's soft applause. I learned to watch from the side, clapping for her because it was expected. Because loving her meant making room for her brightness. No one asked why I stayed silent or why my eyes drifted to the floor. They assumed I was shy, maybe a little slow to bloom. But I was only trying to protect the small, untested dreams I carried in my hands like something too fragile to show. It didn't happen all at once. There was no single day when I understood I was the disappointment. It was more like a slow accumulation of glances and sighs. 100 little moments that whispered the same message. At dinner, my father would ask Lauren about her plans, scholarships, competitions, which colleges she'd chosen. When the conversation turned to me, the air seemed to thin. My mother's smile tightened as she asked if I'd considered something practical. I nodded because arguing never changed anything. Inside, I felt smaller each time. By the time I was 16, I had learned an important truth. Sometimes a family can love you and still never really see you. One evening, I stayed up past midnight working on my drawings. The house was silent except for the tick of the hallway clock. I heard my parents talking in the kitchen, their voices low. My name slipped out between them, wrapped in worry and disappointment. "She's too stubborn," my mother said. "She needs to accept she isn't like Lauren." My father didn't disagree. He only sighed as if he had already given up. I pressed my hand over the sketchbook to keep it steady. I told myself their doubt didn't matter. But part of me believed them. Believed I would never be more than a quiet girl with impossible ideas. That night, I made myself a promise I never spoke aloud. I would find a way to build the place I saw in my mind. No matter how long it took, no matter how small I started, I would prove I wasn't just dreaming. I knew it wouldn't change their hearts overnight. People rarely surrender their old beliefs that easily. But I needed to know for myself that I was capable of more than they imagined. In the morning, I folded my sketches and hid them in a drawer. Out of sight, but never out of reach. It was the first time I realized that proving my worth would be a journey I'd have to walk alone. When graduation came, everyone assumed I'd follow Lauren's example. A safe degree, a predictable future, a life that made sense to them. Instead, I enrolled in hospitality management. My mother's face fell when I told her. "A hotel career, Evelyn, that's not real ambition," she said softly, like she was breaking bad news. My father didn't argue. He only looked away as if it embarrassed him. I tried to explain what it meant to me, how spaces could change people, how service could feel like art. But they didn't hear it. Or maybe they couldn't. That evening, I packed my acceptance letter into a box and felt the first quiet thrill of choosing my own way. I moved into a small apartment near campus. The walls were thin, the floors uneven, but it was mine. Every morning I woke before dawn to work the front desk at a modest business hotel across town. After my shift, I rushed to class, tired but determined. No one was waiting to cheer me on. Sometimes I would stand outside the lecture hall watching other students greet visiting parents with easy smiles. I told myself it didn't matter, that independence was better than borrowed approval. But at night in the quiet, I wished someone would call just to ask how I was. The days blurred together in a rhythm of exhaustion. Work, study, sleep, repeat. There were mornings my body ached so badly I wondered if I could keep going. But giving up felt worse than any fatigue. If I stopped, it would prove them right. I learned how to stretch a single paycheck across the week, how to smile at guests even when I was too tired to speak. Some nights I fell asleep still wearing my uniform, the smell of coffee and lobby air clinging to my hair. And in the darkness, I would whisper to myself, "You're not failing, you're becoming." During my second year, everything began to shift. I met Olivia Price, the general manager everyone respected. She noticed me staying late after my shift, studying the ledgers, scribbling notes. One evening, she stopped by the front desk, her expression thoughtful. "You see details most people ignore," she said. "There's something in you I haven't seen in a long time." Her words startled me. No one had ever spoken to me like that. In that moment, a small hidden part of me felt seen. For the first time, I believed my quiet efforts mattered. After that night, Olivia began leaving articles on my desk. Case studies about hotel turnarounds, stories of entrepreneurs. She never said much, just a nod as she passed by, but each gesture felt like a door opening. I started to stay even later, learning every system, memorizing the way successful properties were run. Sometimes she would watch me with a faint smile as if she already knew where I was headed. Those evenings gave me something I'd never had before, a quiet sense that my efforts were not invisible. It was only a seed of confidence, but it was enough to keep me moving forward. 3 months later, Olivia called me into her office. I thought I'd made a mistake, that I was in trouble. Instead, she handed me a crisp envelope. "Congratulations, Evelyn. You're the new assistant manager." I stared at her, unable to find my voice. No one had ever trusted me with real responsibility. "You've earned this," she said simply. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." That night, I walked home under the city lights, holding the envelope close to my chest. I wanted to call my parents to hear them say they were proud, but I knew they would only ask why I wasn't doing something safer. So I kept the moment to myself, a quiet victory no one could take away. Even so, part of me hoped they would understand. I dialed home late that evening, my heart unsteady. My mother answered, her voice distracted. I told her about the promotion, my first real title. There was a pause, then a polite sigh. "Well, at least it's stable," she said. In the background, I heard my father ask about Lauren's new project. No one asked how I felt or what it meant to me. I thanked her and hung up before the emptiness grew louder. For a long moment, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the phone in my hand. That was the night I decided their approval could no longer be the measure of my worth. After the promotion, I started saving with a purpose. Every paycheck felt like a small step towards something bigger. I cut every unnecessary expense, packed. My meals, wore the same shoes until they split. At night, I spread out my notes across the kitchen table, calculating what it would take to buy a property of my own. No one knew I was planning something so ambitious. It felt safer to keep the dream hidden. I still remembered my mother's voice. "You can't live in fantasies, Evelyn." But each dollar I saved was proof that this was no fantasy. It was a plan taking shape piece by piece. Even with my plan unfolding, the fear never left. Some nights, doubt crept in like a draft I couldn't shut out. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself if I was being foolish. What if I failed? What if everyone was right about me all along? I thought of my family, their careful smiles, the way they spoke of Lauren's success like it was inevitable. In those quiet hours, it was hard not to believe that I was chasing something I'd never catch. But every morning I rose and kept going, because even fear felt better than standing still. 2 years later, the chance finally came. An old hotel downtown was listed for sale. The Silver Swan had faded wallpaper, leaking pipes, and a reputation no one wanted. But when I walked through its empty halls, I saw possibility in every cracked tile. I gathered everything I had saved, signed the papers with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. No family celebration marked the moment. No one called to say I was brave. Still, as I held the keys, a quiet certainty filled me. This was my beginning, no matter who believed in it. That night, I didn't tell anyone what I had done. I went back to the Silver Swan alone. I walked through each silent corridor, feeling the weight of the risk I had taken. The air smelled of old carpet and faded memories, but to me it was the scent of possibility. In the lobby, I sat on a dusty velvet chair and closed my eyes. I imagined guests arriving, music drifting through the airlight, pouring across polished floors. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that I could turn this broken place into something beautiful. I whispered to the empty room, "I will make this matter." The first months were harder than I imagined. Every morning I woke before dawn to meet contractors. There were setbacks, hidden costs, endless repairs. More than once I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake, but each time I walked those halls, I felt a pull stronger than fear. I scrubbed walls myself when the budget ran thin, learned to negotiate with suppliers who barely looked at me. Little by little, the hotel began to change. Fresh paint covered old stains, new light warmed the lobby. Some nights I stood outside and watched the sign glow again. It wasn't finished, but it was alive. One evening, a friend introduced me to Nathan Kim. He was a security consultant with a quiet presence. We talked in the lobby after hours, surrounded by the smell of fresh paint and new beginnings. He listened without interrupting as I explained my vision. For once, I didn't feel like I had to defend it. "You've built more than a business," he said softly. "You've built a place that reflects you." I hired him to oversee security, but he quickly became something more. A steady voice in the chaos, someone who never treated my dream like a gamble. With Nathan on my team, I didn't feel so alone. Months later, the renovations were done. I stood behind the front desk on opening night, heart racing. Every room had been booked. Strangers were arriving, trusting me with their stay. I watched families carry suitcases across the polished floors, business travelers checking in with tired relief. No one knew how much it had cost me to reach this moment. How many nights I'd wondered if I belonged here at all. As the last guest signed the register, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not pride exactly, but a quiet peace. I had made a place that welcomed people the way I once longed to be welcomed. Even as the Silver Swan began to thrive, I told my family very little. When my mother called, she asked if I was still managing that little place. I let her believe whatever she needed to. Part of me wished they could see what I had built. Another part was tired of trying to be understood. I sent photos to Lauren, once pictures of the restored lobby and smiling guests. She never replied. I stopped sending updates after that. It was simpler to keep my successes private, like something too delicate to share with people who never asked. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from my mother. "Your father's turning 65, she wrote. "We're planning a dinner. Will you come?" I read the words twice, feeling the old ache return. No mention of the hotel, no curiosity about my life, just an obligation wrapped in polite expectation. Still, some small part of me hoped this time would be different. I typed back, "Of course. Just tell me when and where." Then I set the phone down and took a long breath. Even after everything I had built, I was still the daughter waiting to be invited in. Days later, another message arrived. My mother had chosen 2 possible venues for the dinner. One was a popular steakhouse across town. The other was the Silver Swan. I stared at the screen, my heart thudding. They had no idea it belonged to me. When I suggested the Silver Swan, my mother replied quickly. "It's probably too expensive for you," she wrote. "We'll see what Lauren thinks." I set the phone aside, fighting the old heaviness in my chest. Even now, they couldn't imagine I might have something to offer. That evening, I walked through the hotel alone. Soft lamplight pooled across the marble floor. I paused by the front desk, remembering the girl I used to be, the one who would have begged to be believed. Now I felt something different. Not anger, not sadness, just a clear sense that their doubt no longer defined me. If they chose this place, they would come as guests, unaware. And maybe in that quiet anonymity, I would finally see them as they really were too. When my mother called to confirm the reservation, I kept my voice calm. "I can help arrange the details," I offered. There was a pause, then a curt reply. "We don't need your help, Evelyn. Lauren is covering part of the cost." I thanked her anyway and hung up. Then I dialed Olivia and Nathan. "I want everything perfect," I said simply. "The best private room, my father's favorite wine." Olivia's voice was warm. "We'll take care of it." As I ended the call, a steady resolve settled in my chest. I would give them an evening they'd never forget. The night of the dinner, I arrived early but didn't go inside. Instead, I sat in my office watching the security cameras. On the screen, I saw my family walk through the doors. My mother inspected every detail with narrowed eyes. Lauren stood by the reception desk, speaking to the staff as if she owned the place. My father looked tired, a little lost, tugging at his shirt cuffs out of habit. I felt a strange ache in my chest. No matter how much had changed, part of me still wished they would look around and wonder, could Evelyn have done all this? I smoothed my dress and checked the time. Soon it would be impossible to hide. In the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. Calm, steady, no trace of the girl who once needed their approval. I picked up the small gift I'd brought for my father, wrapped in simple paper. For a moment, my hand trembled. Not from fear, but from the weight of everything unspoken. I took a deep breath and whispered, "You don't have to be afraid anymore." Then I turned off the monitor, ready to step into the room as who I had become. I entered through this main lobby, my heels quiet on the polished floor. Lauren was the first to see me. Her smile was thin, almost mocking. "You actually came," she said, glancing at my dress as if it were borrowed. I nodded without explaining. I didn't owe her any defense. My mother appeared beside her, eyes flicking over me, searching for something to criticize. "Try not to embarrass us tonight," she whispered. The old sting returned for just a moment, but this time I let it pass. I knew exactly who I was. Lauren stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Did you at least bring something appropriate for a gift?" I held up the small package. "My father will understand." She sighed, clearly disappointed. Then she moved to block my path. "The guests are already seated," she said coolly. "You might want to wait before you come in." I met her gaze without flinching. "I'm not here to wait." Behind her, I saw Nathan approaching, calm as ever, watching everything. For the first time that evening, I felt completely steady in my own skin. Nathan stopped beside us, his presence quiet but firm. "Miss Carter," he said, nodding to me first. Then he turned to Lauren and my mother. "I wanted to confirm that all special arrangements have been prepared." My mother frowned, confused. "What arrangements?" Nathan's voice was gentle but clear. "The requests Miss Carter made for this evening." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "I don't understand. What requests could she possibly make?" I stayed silent, letting the moment unfold. The truth was already pressing at the edges, waiting for the right breath to set it free. My mother shifted uncomfortably, her hand tightening on her clutch. "Evelyn," she demanded softly, "what is he talking about?" I met her eyes without looking away. "The dinner, the service, the wine." Lauren gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "You expect us to believe you arranged any of this?" I didn't answer her. Instead, I turned to Nathan and nodded. He inclined his head, a silent agreement passing between us. In that pause, the space felt impossibly still, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Olivia stepped into the lobby, calm and composed. She greeted Nathan, then turned to me with a warm smile. "Miss Carter," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "Everything has been prepared exactly as you requested." My mother looked between us, her confusion deepening. Lauren's mouth fell open, but no words came. I felt my heartbeat slow, a quiet certainty replacing all the old fear. I took one step closer to them. "This isn't a misunderstanding," I said softly. "This place, everything you see tonight, it's mine." For a moment, no one spoke. The words hung there heavy and undeniable. My mother's lips parted, but no sound came out. Lauren looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. I felt no triumph, only a deep, quiet release. Years of doubt slipping away in a single breath. Olivia waited respectfully beside me, her calm presence grounding the moment. I looked past them to the doorway of the dining room, where guests were starting to wonder. "It was never about proving you wrong," I said. "It was about proving to myself that I could." In the doorway, my father appeared. His eyes moved from Olivia to Nathan, then finally to me. He looked so small in that moment and so much older than I remembered. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "is this true?" I nodded, unable to find more words. He took a slow breath, his gaze sweeping the polished lobby. For the first time, I saw something like wonder in his face. "You built all this?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to apologize for it. My father stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "I don't understand," he said softly, almost to himself. "All those years... Why didn't you tell us?" I swallowed, feeling the old ache in my chest. "Because every time I tried to share something, it was dismissed," I said. You thought I was reckless. You believed I would fail. He looked down at the floor, hands trembling at his sides. I saw regret there, real and raw. Lauren shifted beside him, still silent, her expression caught between disbelief and something like shame. I took a steady breath. I stopped asking for your approval because I learned to trust my own. In that moment, I felt the last piece of fear finally let go. My father rubbed a hand over his face like he was trying to erase the years between us. I thought I was protecting you, he whispered. I thought doubt would keep you from getting hurt. I felt my throat tighten, but I held his gaze. It didn't protect me, I said quietly. It only taught me to hide. My mother finally found her voice brittle and thin. You should have told us, she insisted. You made us look foolish. I shook my head slowly. This was never about making you look small. It was about letting myself grow. Around us, the lobby felt warmer, brighter, as if speaking the truth had changed the air itself. My mother's eyes filled with something I couldn't name. Pride, anger, fear, all tangled together. You always had to do everything your own way, she said, her voice shaking. I met her stare without flinching. Yes, I answered simply, because your way never had room for me. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but no words came. Lauren finally stepped forward, touching her arm. Mom, she said gently, maybe it's time we listened. My mother looked between us, her jaw tight, her eyes shining. For once, I didn't feel the need to fill the silence. If they needed time to understand, I could wait. I wasn't hiding anymore. My father reached for my hand, hesitant at first. When I didn't pull away, he closed his fingers around mine. I am proud of you, he said quietly. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. His voice cracked on the last word, and something in me finally eased. It didn't erase everything that came before, but it mattered anyway. My mother looked away, blinking fast. Lauren's expression softened, her shoulders dropping. No one tried to pretend the past hadn't happened. No one offered neat excuses. We just stood there in the lobby, a family that had never learned how to speak honestly, trying to begin. I let my father's hand go gently. Then I looked at all of them, feeling steadier than ever. I'm willing to share this part of my life, I said, but things have to be different. My mother's brow furrowed. Different how? No more dismissing what I've built. No more comparing me to Lauren. Lauren didn't argue. She only nodded, her face thoughtful, maybe even relieved. I'm not asking for approval, I continued. Only respect. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my father gave a small nod as if he understood. That was enough for now. It was more than I'd ever expected to hear. Later that night, I stood alone in the lobby. The lights were low, the last guests gone. I ran my hand over the polished front desk, remembering every moment that had led me here. All the doubt, the long hours, the quiet victories no one saw. I thought of my family upstairs, still trying to understand who I'd become. Maybe they never fully would, but for the first time, that felt all right. I looked around the space I'd built and felt something like peace. If you've ever been underestimated, know this, your worth was never theirs to measure. It was always yours to claim. If this story spoke to something in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your own experience in the comments. The moments you claimed your worth, no matter who doubted you. And if you'd like to walk this journey with me, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories ahead, and you deserve to be part of them.